I'd like to welcome on stage Hendrik Esser, who is manager for special projects at Ericsson.
Yeah, thank you. Manager Special Projects, that's the title of my life. I'm working in Ericsson as a sort of in-house consultant at the moment. Currently I have maybe the biggest challenge I ever had, which is a transformation project, or not a project, initiative for a 15,000 people organization. So it's just like mind-blowing. Apart from my work at Ericsson, I also work as a volunteer for the Agile Alliance, being the program director for the Supporting Agile Adoption Initiative. And today I'm going to share with you some experiences we have from Ericsson. And I know that there are some colleagues here in the room, hello, who have been part of that journey. So you can ask in the break also those people about the real background and everything, all the details. All right, so, and this is the journey that started 10 years ago, about 2008 to 2012. Yeah, I will talk about the transformation story, then ask the question, is there a method for transforming? Because everybody is asking, how can you do a transformation successfully? So let's look at this, and then we are going to re-examine my transformation story and think a bit deeper, looking into a kind of a method. And that method, no secret, is very much inspired by Dave Snowden's thoughts. So, yeah. All right. 2008, something needs to change. We need to get going on a journey. So we are sitting there. I'm a member of a leadership team of a 2,000 people organization. So not as gigantic as the one I'm involved in now, but 2,000 people is still a lot, distributed internationally over 7-8 sites. And in our leadership team, we see we are earning a lot of money with our product. Actually, the situation financially is really, really good, but we are aware that this might not be there forever. So actually, it's a good time to change when you're in a non-crisis situation. There were a number of problems that we were really not happy with. So we were looking at quality. We have been driving a 3 times better quality and then a 10 times better quality initiative. The outcome was so-so. We didn't really reach 10 times better quality. We had initiatives around time to market. So at that time, all our product projects were delayed by 12 to 18 months. And we were not happy with the speed of our return on investment. So once the product was on the market, it took a long time before customers would be pulling it. So we said, somehow this is not good, so what's wrong here? And at that time, we still were talking a lot about the iron triangle, scope, cost, quality, and we were always trying to fix all those threes, make commitments around all those threes. We had so-called sign-in-blood sessions sometimes with our projects, where we were trying to fix all these 3 dimensions. And we came to the conclusion this is not possible. So what to do about it? We said, okay, we need to dismantle the problem. Let's build 7 work streams. So we had work streams that were looking into how do we test, how do we take decisions, how do we manage requirements, and so on. And a few months into that journey, we came to the conclusion, wait a second, we can't do this alone. We as leaders are far too far away from where the real action is. We need to involve people into this one. We need to tap into the experience of everybody. So we sent a sort of invitation to all 2,000 people, whoever is passionate about it, join us on this journey. And over the next couple of months, we got about 140 volunteers. And that was just amazing for us. I mean, a lot of people who were like, yeah, I want to contribute. I want to make this whole thing better because some of the problems I really dislike myself. And yeah. So we had 140 volunteers who were starting to create slides with new process descriptions. And we ended up with more than 450 slides of new process descriptions within 5 months. And that was the moment where we thought, wait a second, is this good? So is this really just a process change? And you could also see this psychological momentum that people felt, okay, now I'm a volunteer, I'm going to define how everybody else is working. Yeah, so I'm in control, I'm in the power now. So you understand a bit like the power dimension that was dynamics that were going. So 2 things at that time. First of all, fantastic, people are with us. They want to contribute. At the same time, we understand, hey guys, don't produce more slides. Your wisdom is very, very welcome, but it's not the right thing to now say, these 450 slides are exactly the way we want to work in the future. So we need to find another thing. And we said, okay, we need to experiment. I mean, it's not only about writing something on PowerPoints, we need to experiment with stuff. And at that time, I was actually, by the way, one of the persons who said, some of the teams came up saying, we should go agile, we should build cross-functional teams and work with Scrum. And I was one of the people saying, well, I looked at this agile stuff and I don't think it can scale. We can forget this in a 2,000 people organization. So, but then some people said, let's run experiments. Yeah. Some people tried out Scrum. There were some consultants helping us, understanding how Scrum works and what agility means. The teams come back from the experiment and they say, wow, this is fantastic. This is exactly helping us with the problems we have. So, okay, yeah. Well, what we understood at that point of time was, first of all, it's very much about the people. It's not only the processes. And when the people say, Scrum is helping us, and I say, but we can't scale it, then, okay, let's find out how we can scale it. Yeah. And that led to that we said, okay, the leaders need to understand agility first. I mean, now some teams have experimented with it and they say it's a good thing, and the leaders were like, I'm not sure I understand this. So we hired consultants who were experienced in Agile, who were doing a very thorough several-day training with us leaders, introducing us to the rough framework of Scrum, but very much more focused on the mindset shift that is involved with agility. And that really started changing our minds. It took me overall, for myself, like Agile is very much about embracing change. That is one of the things I learned there. And of course, it took me something like almost 2 years until I really fully, wholeheartedly understood what that means. But at least I got disturbed and I got the right thinking there in these trainings. So what happened next? We come out of this one, we see everything that has been created, and we said, okay, we have a new way of working, which should be an agile way of working, but this will not be the whole thing. We need to change other things. We need to have a new organizational blueprint, because we have been working so much in silos. We don't have really these cross-functional teams. We have a system management and technology department. We have a software design department. We have a test department. We have a rollout department. And this is not, if we really want to optimize things, we need to pull everything together. So we said we need to reorganize and put everybody together so we can build co-located cross-functional teams. And of course, we needed to think, how do we introduce this change? Because if you change the way of working and your structures, your steering structures and everything, this is a huge thing. So we needed to come up with an idea how we are going to do this. Then, of course, we needed some approval from the upper management above us. And because of the reorganization, we were recruiting quite heavily. It was, by the way, an interesting thing. About mindset shift. The manager of our organization, we in the leadership team, we were discussing what should be the new structures. And in this discussion of the structures, you could really see how the members of the leadership team were starting to position themselves politically. So somebody would start saying, yeah, but this function should encompass that and that thing as well, thinking, oh, I'm probably going to have that job. And my manager, she was really brilliant in this. She stopped the whole thing by saying, you know what, guys? None of you will have your job on 1st of January, and you all have to reapply for a leadership position. It killed the politics immediately. And of course, it was a bit scary, but it was a very healthy thing, because it was a clear message sent, hey, we really need to have a mindset shift. So the recruitment happened end of 2009. And then on 1st of January 2010, basically we said, let's do it. So we flipped a switch almost from one day to the next. We had communicated to these 2,000 people that something is going to happen. We had prepared roadshows where leaders would go and present the whole thing. And it would actually, the leader from one side would go to another side to explain the change, to see, hey, we are all standing behind this together. So what happened? So we started with the trainer, coach, the coaches, and that was actually, that's why I'm so happy to be here in Greece, because that's where it all started. In Patra, we had, I think, a 3-month co-location of trainers from all around the globe. We have been flying people in from all the sides into this camp. They were trained to become trainers for a Scrum Master, Product Owner, and team member roles, but also they were intensively trained in understanding the Agile mindset and so on. So 3 very, very intensive months. And this was actually the start also of our Agile coaching network, which is still existing to some extent today. So this is a completely self-organized thing. It's like our Agile guerrilla. You can't kill this anymore. No leader can kill this, because those are self-organized people who are just collaborating across the whole company. Then we also introduced local transition teams. So as I said, the leaders have been trained into agility, agile mindset. Then this person from the side that has been participating in the training here, coach the coaches, train the trainers, was coming back to the site, and then they could together drive the site and roll out trainings, work with the leadership teams, and so on. Then we had a stepwise training rollout. So step by step, we were training the teams, and our strategy was, let's finish the old projects in the old way of working. We can't do like 2,000 people in just 3 months. We finished this old project within a bit more than a year. And gradually, as people become available from that project, we train them into agile ways of working, and then they start working there. So stepwise training rollout. Then when the teams started working, we of course needed to coach them, because just using Scrum you could use Scrum as a process framework, of course, but what you really want is also the mindset shift. So we had these coaches helping the team to understand what's the purpose of these practices and why are they as they are. Then came the moment after about a year when all teams were trained, and a bit later then all teams were practicing. It was very important for us to get the teams practicing as soon as possible. So this was a journey now that I showed of about 2 years. Now let's look maybe into a neighboring organization. Okay, and by the way, another thing. While this was happening, we needed to sort out about 1 million things that we have been dealing with before. So how do we do the test? How do we learn? How do we take care of system integrity? How do we handle configuration management, document management, and all these things? So while the teams were learning agility, everybody was chewing on solving all these things in the new mindset. Okay, so to the neighboring organization. And as you see from this graph, there was maybe not such a straight journey in the neighboring organizations. What happened there? As a top manager, that top manager saw, look, what those guys are doing is just fantastic. You all need to do the same thing. Take this blueprint, start using agile ways of working. You really have to do it. So do the same. Then people said, okay, this blueprint looks strange, I don't get it, but okay, if we have to do it, let's do it. They started to hire trainers, so they were sending people to trainings, got all teams trained after a while. Still, the question was, how can this whole thing work, really? So there was still doubt about how this whole thing is going to work. Sometimes leading to the insight, okay, Agile doesn't work over here. Maybe it works for the guys in the neighboring organization, but for us, this is not a thing. But still, they saw it's working somewhere else, and everybody else started doing it, so maybe there is something to it, and slowly we were increasing agility. But this is now a 2-year journey, what you see here. Then we got a weather change, I would almost say, a new CEO hiring new head of HR. And that person was had a very American, way of handling human resources, meaning introducing stack rankings, introducing Gaussian distribution curves for employee ratings, talent management, all these rigid HR processes. Our job and career model was changing in a very strange way, and so on. And that really had a strong impact on our culture. So things were really going south at that point in time. Until 2 years ago, we got a new CEO. And that new CEO was firing, first of all, this other head of HR, hiring a new person, and now the communication has changed again completely. And this is a much more like forward-looking, we need to be one Ericsson, and we need to delight the customer kind of phrasings. And now we are a somewhat agile organization when you look into the large organization. In R&D, of course. There is left and right pieces of the organization who have not yet made the journey. So, things can go different. So, what are some learnings from this? First of all, don't start with Agile being your goal. You have probably heard this a number of times before. Agility is not the goal. Start with what are your pain points. Agile is not the goal, but Agile might be part of your solution. And then a change towards agility is about a change in mindset. And the question is, how do you change the way you see and think about the world? And the thing really is that leaders are so system relevant. The way leaders behave has a huge effect on the organization. So leaders have to go first. So our learning here really is change happens when the leaders become the change they want to see. That's why it was so important that the leaders have the agile training first and very intensively. You need to build your own agile masters, people who can be shepherds of the mindset and who can gently guide the teams towards the mindset part of the thing and not only the routines. Use these agile masters in your local transition teams and let people participate in creating the changes. I mean, activating these 140 people was just amazing. And then practice and learn. It's a lot of practicing and learning. But then there's also a good portion of luck involved because, there might be a weather change, like you get a new CEO or something, and that's just sometimes bad luck, sometimes good luck, and you need to be able to respond to these kind of impulses and changes from your environment. All right, so next question then is, what do we learn from this? Is there any method that we can find that is more increasing the likelihood that we succeed with a transformation? And for that one, we of course need to look at how do we traditionally approach change. So traditionally we approach change in this way. We look at our infrastructure, and we look at the flow in our organization, and we think, okay, what's going on here? So maybe if we want to have better flow, we need to build another lane on the motorway or a motorway exit, or we need to build another building and infrastructure and so on. And this is a typical leader's view on an organization. We're looking at the infrastructure, the flow and the processes. But what's missing here? What's not visible when you look at the thing? Exactly, people. So, because when you zoom into this, the thing looks like this. There's people inhabiting this infrastructure and living in it and doing something. And I mean, now you could, of course, say, to avoid that anything goes wrong, I will go and tell each and every of these persons what's your year-end goal, your targets, have a strict follow-up on these things, maybe put rewards on this. But this is what we all know from the past as being micromanagement, and we know how futile that is. This is really a complex environment with all these people, and that's, by the way, another important thing. We sometimes talk about we need to have more self-organization in our company, but actually self-organization is already there. You can't actually avoid self-organization. And most of the time, because people are a bit lazy, self-organization leads to optimization. Like in this example here, okay, the area here got a bit overcrowded, but people wanted to cross the street, so they used the space in a much better way. So they have optimized the throughput on this crossing by violating the rule that you should only walk in certain areas. So, how can we approach a complex system? Yeah, Dave said it all in the morning. I don't have to explain this anymore to you. It's pretty much the Cynefin framework. And when you think about what kind of problem is an agile transformation, it's clearly in this domain, in the complex domain. So an agile transformation is an emergent change of your organization's human system. And then the question is, a better approach is then to change that system and via experiments, but how can we identify a good system change experiments? How can we influence a human system? So when you think about how to influence a human system, you come across this one here, constraints. Yeah, well, what are constraints? Dave talked about enabling constraints this morning. So what are they good for? All societies have shared rules and guidelines. And that's actually making us a civilization. They ensure that bigger crowds of people can live and work together in harmony and create something really good for the better of the society. So these rules are either set or they emerge. So there is people working in your government with legislation, they make laws. Yeah, you all have neighbors. You probably also have a law that says don't kill your neighbor. Yeah, it's a very helpful law, actually. But there's also these emergent rules, like when I think about our landscape offices, how long is it allowed to stand at the desk of somebody and have a loud conversation until a person over there starts to get disturbed? Those are locally emerging rules. And on every floor in our office building, there are slightly different rules around that one. Yeah. And so these constraints are creating an alignment, and they help us to avoid diving into chaos when we are driving something like an agile transformation. And those constraints, we have to be aware, always create side effects. You know, if you put a barrier here, people will find a way to run around the barrier. Yeah. So, constraints. Now, it's a bit of a leadership question. What are the constraints that we can actually manage in a company? What can we influence? So, what do we manage? When I ask this question, usually people say, yeah, we manage people. We are people managers. Aha, okay, so people. Are people a constraint? What is it really that, how do we influence people? Well, in our discussion, we came across two things that you can influence about people. One thing is behavior, and the other one, capabilities. We have all these feedback talks at least once a year, and usually all of us get a lot of feedback on our daily work. So there are feedbacks that help us to give us feedback on what is a helpful behavior in our environment, what is a non-helpful behavior, and what are behaviors that are absolutely unacceptable here. And so this is one thing you can influence as a leader, leading by example, changing the behavior of others, and by giving clear feedback. And of course, you can work with the capabilities. So you can give people training sessions, coachings. You can change the diversity of the team, hire the people with the right skills and talents, and so on. And then what else can we manage? Yeah, the traditional ones, processes, of course, and structures. This is our cozy corner. We have been managing process and structure for decades. What is important here is that those four are actually a system of constraints or domains. So when you change something in one of those four, probably you have a side effect on the other three. So for example, you hire a new leader of an organization. That leader is rewarding different behaviors from that leader's team, and all of a sudden the behaviors of the others are changing. Or you introduce a new process, and people start behaving in a different way. You introduce a KPI or a measurement, and people start behaving in a different way, or they develop new skills and capabilities. So what that leads to is what we call our ecosystem tool. So basically it's a thing that you can do with your team on a whiteboard or a flip chart. So you make a 2x2 matrix and put the four constraints in there, maybe some arrows to remember if I do something here, it has a side effect over there. Then of course you want to change towards something, or you want to solve a certain problem, so you need to put the desired state or problem statement into the center. And then you get going. You think, okay, what behaviors are there that would help us to achieve the desired state, and what behaviors do we see today that are not helpful for reaching our desired state? What capabilities do we need to reach our desired state? What processes do we need to reach our desired state? What processes would help us to let the desired behaviors emerge better? And what processes do we have today that might amplify the unwanted behaviors? And the same thing with structures. When you are thinking a bit deeper into this one, behavior is the thing that you can always see above the water surface. This is the real thing you can see. You can see how somebody behaves. But you need to be aware that below the water surface there are some hidden things like mindset and attitudes and values and needs. We often, unfortunately, fall into the trap looking at someone and saying, because if I would behave like this person, my value probably would be like that, and my mindset would be like that. So we are projecting ourselves to another person. And then we tend to make maybe judgments. That's a trap. So we can only really see the behavior, take it what it is, and we can hope maybe for certain values, mindset and attitude, but we can never be 100% sure about those. On the capability side, of course, like I said, competence, skills, number of people, and so on. Below the surface is things like hidden talents. And sometimes we ourselves are not even aware of our talent. It's just hidden at the moment. And sometimes it's just nice to, with the right challenge, to let this hidden talent become a visible talent. Processes, processes, practices, tools. Below the surface are probably habits that we are not aware of, as individuals and as a society. And then structures, organization, governance, compensation, structures, roles. And below the surface you have things like these informal networks that we all know from our companies. And then what you do is a almost traditional plan, do, check, act kind of thing. So you look at your system, you run a system retrospective. By the way, one of the most important things to keep an agile transformation on track is to run organization retrospectives. Retrospectives are not only something for the Scrum teams, they are also something for the leadership teams. But the leaders, of course, being system shepherds, they look at the system and they try to improve the system via retrospectives. So that's what's happening here. You look at your system, what's emerging. Yeah? You check, okay, is my goal or wanted position still valid? Is this still what we are after? And then we think behaviors, capabilities, processes, structures, what supports our vision, what doesn't. We define a change experiment, take change actions, and see what emerges. Okay, so what a theory. Let's go a bit into example. And now I show you a bit what has happened from the 1st of January 2010 onwards in our Agile journey, what kind of things happened. So, intervention 1. I don't call this iteration. I was once asked, these leadership team retrospectives, what is the sprint length? This is not working because this is emergent. You don't know how long something takes to emerge until you feel like, now has a point come that I need to put an enabling constraint in here. So it's rather an intervention that you do here. And this is our starting point. We said we need to have better time to market, better customer satisfaction, better quality. And to do that, our leadership team had understood we need to empower teams. Okay, how do we empower teams? Well, cross-functional teams. They are very empowered because they have all perspectives together, so they can really take their decisions and they can do things. If we want to have cross-functional teams, it means we need to reorganize. We need to put our system design, the software development, and the test into one organization. So we need to reorganize the whole thing. Then, of course, they need training, so we need to train and coach the teams. That was why we did the train the trainer, coach the coaches. As a process framework, we thought Scrum is a good thing because it's iterative, it gives us fast feedback loops and so on. Very good. That comes, of course, on the structure side with Scrum Master and Product Owner roles. So we needed to talk to HR and start to add these kind of things to our career model, for example. But then, of course, then you have maybe empowered teams, but they are only empowered if the leaders let go. Yeah? So we were also then defining expected leadership team behaviors. So that was a one-slider at that time where we put things like we are open and curious, we let go, we don't jump in immediately, those kind of things. And those are actually things that you discover when you have a workshop together and you basically make an agreement with each other. What are the behaviors that we want to live up to? And then to foster these expected leadership behaviors, we were recruiting leaders. And that was a bit this thing where our boss said, yeah, you're not going to have your job on 1st of January. Everybody has to reapply. We did this with most of the organization. Almost all leaders needed to reapply. The thing is, about, I would say, 95% of the previous leaders became the new leaders. But this had an extremely strong clean-up effect in the sense that people understood, hey, something is changing. If I'm now going to an interview for this leadership position, there is different things expected from me, and I need to create some credibility why I'm the right person for this new environment, a new way of working. Yeah, then retrospectives, as I said, not only on the team level, but also on the organization level. We used the Agile Manifesto and communicated it to, and especially the principles, to foster these expected behaviors. We said, okay, we did this for the product development organization, this 2,000 people, but our most important stakeholder outside our organization was the product management. And we said, if we don't have that stakeholder on board, we will not get very far. So we said a very important thing is that we get this collaboration between the development and the product management working extremely well in an agile way of working. Yeah. And to make that happen, we introduced a practice that we called uncertainty management. That's a whole talk of its own, but this was also our concept how to scale agility, if you will, across this super large organization. Going from projects to rather a program management and really trying to find practices that convey uncertainty and risk in a safe way. Yeah, a decision model, governance, backlog coordination, and so on. So this was the starting experiment. It's not really like a small safe to fail experiment, so it was a leap of faith. And then let's see what happened. So what happened? So one thing that emerged was we had full leadership support for the change from day one. So this re-recruitment, the reorganization really had a super important effect here. And we could immediately see how there was a very strong momentum going through the organization. But then about 3 months into the journey, something else happened. The teams ignored the committees. So in the past, we had system architecture. System architecture is something that is usually guarded by some guardians, so by some architects who are working in committees who were approving architecture proposals. And the teams got in their agile training the idea, yeah, everybody can do architecture and you are fully empowered to do so. And the team started to ignore the architects. Now that was a moment where from a management point of view, we said, wait a second, I mean, refactoring a small subroutine is a thing that goes relatively fast, but refactoring an architectural thing that hasn't worked out, this is really too expensive for us. So somehow, and not all the teams are able to do architectural work so well. So how do we do this? So first of all, we said we need to reinforce the architect roles. Yeah? So we told the teams, hey, you need to listen what those guys are saying, and we still need these kind of approval routines. But then we also understood the problem that the team said, we have been working 6 weeks on an architecture proposal. Now we come to the review, and the committee says, no, it's all wrong. You need to do like this and that. So we are wasting our time here. So that made us think, okay, there needs to be a bit of a behavioral change if the committees, they need to have more a mentoring approach. So being with the team continually and helping the team to work out the architecture. So like an architecture coach almost. So we were starting to introduce things like, it started small with 1/3 reviews and more frequent interactions between the team and the architects. So what happened next? Working software is the only progress indicator. This is a rude misinterpretation of the Agile Manifesto, I think, that I have seen. By the way, we are not the only ones, I heard. Documentation was not handled properly. So people thought, okay, documentation doesn't really matter. So that's of course not good, because what we want is that, from a behavioral point of view, that the team focus on everything the customer expects, not only code. I mean, you need to deliver the manual with the system as well. So how do you foster this? Okay, we said that there needs to be higher priority on things that are not code, and the shepherd for that one is the product owner. So we were talking to the product owners to support us in this. What happened next? Oh, collaboration, development, product management working well. So our routines around uncertainty management, having also meeting structures where we would meet the product management every week, where we were aligning on where are we, what are the expectations from the customer and the market, what's the situation in teams, what have we learned. This dialogue, which had a lot of friction in the beginning, became smoother and smoother because people were collaborating with each other on a weekly basis. So that was a really positive thing coming out of this. But then there was another thing coming out of the system, and that was that the teams were diverging because we got into this agile religious wars. So Agile, because the top leader had said to the neighboring organization, look what those guys are doing, Agile is the thing to do. People were like, I'm more Agile than you. My Agile is better than yours, and so on. So yeah, probably you have seen that in your organizations as well. The side effect of this is, apart from people not collaborating and rather debating stuff, is that the end-to-end flow was not optimized. And we are producing very large software systems. They need to be integrated, and if every team has an own idea how software should be integrated, you end up with a total mess. So we need to do something about this one. What did we do? So first of all, that was the moment where we understood, hey, there's empowerment, yes, but within boundaries. You can't do just anything. There are things that are where we have to be absolutely aligned, and where we are. That's actually the moment where we understood the concept of enabling constraints. And so we clarified which processes and tools are mandatory and which ones are optional, and discussed that actually with the teams. We involved them in this discussion. And we were strengthening the decision model, and we put more end-to-end into the definition of done. By the way, another thing very important is our definition of done has been growing and growing and growing over the years because of these kind of findings. And a couple of years back, we also saw that is getting too much. So you need to clean up your definition of done, because if something has become a routine and it's always there, just remove the criterion and focus on those things that are really relevant, where you have to remember, hey, we shouldn't forget this thing. Next thing, teams want to be closer to the customers. Note one thing, we always say customer closest is important, but we did not demand this from the teams from day one. And now it emerged from the system here, the organization. The teams themselves said it would be so much nicer if we would be closer to the customers, and I really understand what they are thinking. And we said, yeah, okay, let's go. So link the teams into the communication between product management and the customer, have some early customer interactions, and early demos on the process side. Very good. What happened next? Oh, teams overcommitted to customers, high stress level. So now the teams are meeting with the customer, and they are like, I'm a team member, I want to make my customer happy. The customer is excited about this discussion with the developer, and the development people are like, yeah, I want to make you happy, yeah, you can have this, I will do it for you. Yeah. And then the developer comes home to the team, and then they find out, oh, we have been far too optimistic. And now in the past, of course, there was always a damn product manager I could blame for making this ridiculous commitment to our customer. Now it was the team member itself that was making that commitment. And they are like, oh my God. So people were really like, I need to live up to that commitment, and people started working days and nights and weekends to make the deadline that they have been promising. So what to do about that one? That's not good, this stress level. we had to learn how to make realistic commitments. So we had a number of discussions around this one. And we started to discuss also practices and routines around expectation management, because you will be in situations more frequently where you say something to a customer and you have been too optimistic, and how to roll back or how to mitigate that situation, how to find a way forward. We need to have that conversation, and we need to find a professional way how to do this. Yeah, and that journey continues. This was now something like 2-3 years through that journey. Things emerge all the time, and as a leadership team, you need to all the time see in your retrospectives what's coming up from the system, what do we need to react on. And I can tell you it's partly a very tough journey, because there are things that are emerging and I think we need to do something, we need to do something. But no, if you jump into early, your team will not learn. So sometimes you need to get the people close to hitting the wall with something. and that's so hard. It's so hard in the first 2 years, I would say, to make that happen. Yeah, results. 100% product releases on time since the change, 50% less defects found at customer after product release, and a much better decision through significantly improved interactions. Now you might say, wait a second, Hendrik, didn't you talk about time to market, quality? Yeah, I see here, return on investment. What's this? Yeah, this is what emerged out of our change. We have not reached everything we wanted, but yeah, that's how life is. So now we have, of course, to find other ways how to make the other things happen. Yeah. So, and actually those are great results still, so we are pretty happy with what we achieved. So key learnings, okay, this we had already. Start with from the problem you want to solve. Agile is not the goal. Change towards agility is about change in mindset, the way you think and see the world, and leaders really, really go first, and you need to have your agile masters who are accompanying the change to help you learn the new mindset. And then any change you drive will have side effects. So you need to run your organizational retrospectives in your leadership teams. And an experimental probe, sense, respond approach helps to cope with the emergence of things. And that is going a bit back to this CEO change and these kind of environmental changes. The organization that I was part of that went first with this agile transformation, where really the mindset was adopted, was able to cope with all these disturbances now coming from this strange head of HR and so on. And they were able to keep the agile mindset going. So this probe, sense, respond thing is super important to keep things on track and in the right direction. Yeah, and then of course you might not reach all the things you wanted initially, but first of all you will learn new things that you were not even aware of you are possible. I had it several times during the whole journey that all of a sudden I saw problems I was not even aware of before. My perspective had changed and I thought, wow, we always had this problem. I was unable to see it, and now we could do something about it. So you're learning new tricks all the time, and it's a very rewarding journey because you're really growing as an organization and as a person. Yeah, that leads to Q&A.
Hendrik, thank you. Let's go for a quick Q&A.
Hi, great talk. I have a question about the teams, and specifically for what kind of teams were. It was feature teams or component teams, and how you handle the dependencies, if there were any dependencies, because to increase agility you have to take care of this factor, let's say. So
yep.
What did you do in that?
Yeah. So we were building feature teams, but of course our organization with the old silos was very component based in the beginning. So we had a competence challenge because in one side, internationally distributed, in one side we have a certain competence, in another side we have another competence, and if people need to do a feature end to end, so we were starting to fly around some people for helping others, other teams to learn how to do the design in a different part of the system. And this was actually something that took years. So in the meantime, I think you guys are probably more aware of this because you are in this today still. Over the years, people have learned to really design whole features.
Just another quick question. Have you used any ideas from frameworks like Less or Safe or Nexus and for scaling?
Our journey started with the Larman photo book about scaling agile development, but when we started, that was 2008. Fortunately, Safe didn't exist at that time, so we were not falling into that trap. I always feel it was good the way it worked for us because we were inventing the scaling ourselves, and we were reading a lot of books as an inspiration, but we were not following strictly and blindly any framework.
Thank you.
Hello. I just want to come back to this development, product management collaboration that you mentioned. Actually, I've been part some years ago in large-scale agile transformation in one of Ericsson's rivals. So we tried to become agile in order to beat Ericsson. That was the goal at that time. And we identified that the greatest resistance was found somewhere in the middle management, meaning that the leaders and the development teams were on board, were very fast and, let's say, enthusiastically on board. But roles like product, program management, line management, all these people shown the greatest resistance because actually they were afraid that their roles will stop to exist. So this collaboration and the only mention about uncertainty management didn't actually work very well because between the leaders and the development teams, all this level in the middle was, let's say, stopping things from happening, and the agile transformation didn't actually work on that. So how did you tackle that? And about role mapping between in the old, let's say, way, when you have all these roles, and the agile way?
I mean, this collaboration, getting that one working was 1.5 years journey. And it started with that we really made a deal, more or less, with the head of product management, that we said, okay, guys, what we are now going to do is the following. We are going agile, and that means the following things. So our uncertainty management, in a nutshell, what it does is, instead of giving a precisely wrong estimate, like we were going to deliver this on 7th of September, 9 a.m., we said we are going to deliver this between June and October. And that range would be re-estimated after every sprint. And if it's shrinking, you have a leading indicator that it's going into the right direction, or a leading indicator that you need to take care of something. So that was our idea about the whole thing. And we got our product management on board with that idea. In the beginning, when we started to show the ranges, they were freaking out, of course, because they said, oh, but you know, we need this in September, and you say July bis October, this is not good, you need to commit to September. And then we explained again, okay, but according to our current best knowledge, this is the range. But then over the year, they saw, oh, actually this range thing is working as a radar, and it's a really good tool for risk management. And after 1.5 years, they were really embracing the whole thing fully, and they were on board with us on this. So then the whole question of how we make commitments and so on, the whole discussion turned completely.
As I take this question, I'd just like to let you know that the other session that's happening downstairs is actually starting right now, as we're trying to hack the program a little bit so we don't have queues at lunch again, like we did yesterday. Where was the question? It was here. So if you want to go downstairs, I would go right now.
Hello. Did you use any planning and estimation techniques?
It's a bit hard to understand the question. So,
did you use any planning or estimation thing in order to self-regulate the overcommitment that developers did with the customers?
So, did I understand right? You are asking for a method for estimating these things.
So a developer can overcommit once, but then the team will
yeah,
understand.
Commitment evolves over time. That's the biggest insight. And of course, we understand when a customer wants to have something, because that's a valid desire. then, of course, we need to see how close can we come to satisfying this. And we are managing this very actively throughout the time. So when we see, for example, that our range is showing that there's a high risk we are not going to deliver on time, either we need to start having a discussion with that customer, or we can add another team to this development to speed things up, or whatever. So you can become very creative in finding the way how to do this.
Thank you.
Hendrik, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.